Hello. My name is Mitchell Foley. I am a software engineer on the Google Visualization API. All right, so how many people are actually familiar with the Google Visualization API? All right, actually a pretty good number. That's much more than I expected. For those of you who haven't heard of it before, well, I'll give you a good introduction to what it is and why you might want to use it right now. So what you can do with it is actually a JavaScript API that is available for free for the public to use. It's not only used by customers outside of Google. You might want to use it on your just personal website, but it's used by internal clients as well, like Google Docs, AdWords, AdSense, YouTube Analytics. We get a lot of customers inside Google. And what we want to do is we want to take your data and we want to transform it into a beautiful visualization that you can use to tell your story, to convey a message to your users. And you can do that a couple of different ways. So we'll show you first one of our biggest clients, Google Docs. And what we have here is just a spreadsheet with a little bit of data. How much pizza I had last night for dinner. Probably had a little too much, but we just took our, the type of pizza and the number of slices, put them in a couple of cells, highlighted it, and then made a chart out of it. Very, very simple stuff. But we can also do this just on a regular HTML page. So here's just a very, very basic HTML page. What we're doing here is we're including a very simple script. This is the Google's JS API loader. You can use it to load a number of different libraries, the visualization library being one of them. And we also have a placeholder div here for our chart. We're going to write a script I'll see on the next page where we actually insert the chart into this div. OK, so it looks like a big slide full of code here, but it's actually not too complicated. We're not doing anything really complicated here. The first thing we're doing is, with that loader script that we saw in the previous slide, we're actually going to tell it what we want to load. And we want to load, in this case, the core chart package. We have a number of different packages. In this case, we just want that simple bar chart that you saw earlier. So that's one of our core charts. And we're going to say, OK, please load this core chart package for us. And when you're finished loading, call this function. This is just JavaScript. It just runs right in the browser. And so it calls our callback draw stuff. Now, once we know that we have all of the classes and objects and everything that we need to draw the chart, we can start to do that. So the first thing we need to do here is we need to set up our data. So we need to get our data into a data table. And the data table is the basic construct that we use to pass our data around, to format it, to provide extra information about it if necessary. In this case, we're just doing a very simple data table where we're saying the topping and the number of slices. So we add our two columns. We add our slices and the amount we ate. Then we need to set some chart options. Now, these chart options, there's a lot of different options. Most of them you can apply to actually any visualization that you want. This one, we're just going to set a title and then the width and the height of what the chart area is. And finally, we'll construct the chart object and actually draw it. And this is what we get. It looks exactly the same as it did on the other slide. Another good thing to note is that this is actually fully interactive. And you can see my mouse there. Good. And so when the user hovers over, they can actually see more details about each of the data points. So we're just highlighting different things, and it's giving us tooltips that provide extra information about our data. So why would you want to do this? Why would you want to use charts instead of just data tables or HTML tables like this to tell the story of your data? And it's really that. It's the storytelling. Being able to visually see something is going to be much more effective than having Hamilton Norwood stage with a bunch of numbers. I'm guessing not a lot of people in here are even familiar with the Hamilton Norwood stage. I certainly wasn't before I wrote this. And so we can take this, we can put it into a data table, and we can easily make a bunch of different charts. And these are some very basic ones. None of these really tell the right story. They don't really tell you what am I trying to convey here. We got a bunch of names, but we don't. What's going on? So we can actually see if we tell the story correctly. What we get is we get a story of how the Google Visualization development team is follically challenged. Not a lot of hair on the team. We see Sergi, Dan, and Jeremy. They're really bringing all the hair to the team. We're trying to get them haircuts, but We'll see. And so this is what I want to do is over the next half hour or so, I want to tell a story. And I want to tell a story using all of the new features that we've been working on for the past year to help you tell stories with your data. Oh, and again, this is fully interactive. So the story I'm going to tell you is about me, and it's about me becoming an adult. There's been a lot of events in my life recently where I feel much more grown up than I did really than a couple months ago. I've talked to a lot of people about becoming an adult. Nobody really knows what that means. Are there any adults here? I'm not seeing very many hands at all, so I'm guessing you're all experienced the same thing as I have. So the first thing is the timeline. So this is a brand new visualization that we've been working on, and the ability to show different points in history and really tell the story. So right here you can see I got engaged in March of 2012. Thank you. Google I/O, giving this talk, this is a pretty big grown-up moment for me. There's a lot of people here. A lot of people are going to be watching this on YouTube later on, hopefully. So giving the I/O talk, that's a reasonable amount of responsibility. Condo. So I'm in the process of closing on a condo right now. I'm from Boston. Real estate isn't quite as crazy as it is here, but it's still reasonably insane. And married. I mentioned I got engaged. We have a wedding date set for early September of this year. So a lot of planning all going on at once, a lot of new responsibilities, a lot of uncharted territories. And this timeline really helps to show you how we have kind of more things all scrunched together at the end there than I would have liked to deal with at once. But there it is. All right, so let's go over the code for this, if my clicker works. All right, so first thing is, you notice on the previous visualizations where I just had the basic bar charts, is that here we're loading a new type of visualization. This isn't one of our core charts. So you can actually load this independently from the core chart package. So we're loading the timeline package instead here. The basic steps are still the same. We're creating our data table. We're using a little bit of a different method here. We're just converting a JavaScript array directly into a data table. So once we have our data table and we have our options, now we're just going to construct our chart. And the chart, instead of doing column chart like we were previously, we're just doing timeline. And the Google Visualization API does all of the work for you. They figure out, okay, what are the 4 best colors that will contrast with each other nicely that's going to really make this visualization pop? What's going to stand out the most? How far apart should all of the labels be on the tick axis? So you can see it shows a quarterly interval here. And it said, this is what's really going to tell the story the best, the most effectively for you. So all you have to do is provide it your data, and it will say, okay, I'll do all the work for you. But we can actually make this a bit more complicated. There's more than just those 4 events. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of work leading up to each of those. So you can see here, I went ring shopping for about a month and a half. And engaged isn't just a point in time. It's really a long-term thing. Well, in my case, it's a long-term thing. I'm going to be engaged about a year and a half before everything's said and done. Buying the condo, that is not a one moment in time. That is a long, long process. Long process. So we had to do condo shopping. And writing this I/O presentation even took a bunch of time. So here you can see, instead of just the one category here that just says grown-up stuff, now I have 3 separate categories. I have a relationship, a condo, and the I/O category. So you can further divide your data to even more clearly tell the story. Now, in order to do that, the only difference here is I'm providing, instead of just one category, so you can see where it says relationship and condo and I/O here, it used to just say grown-up stuff. We can see that back here. See, it just says grown-up stuff. So now I'm giving 3 different categories, and it's figuring out, okay, now that I have these 3 different categories, I should put them all into different lines. I'm also setting ranges now. So instead of points in history, like with the I/O being today, or 2 days ago, I guess I have that set for, we're setting a start date and an end date rather than just a point in history. But other than that, everything's pretty much the same. We're not adding a ton of new complexity to get this new functionality. And even still, we can actually stack events on top of each other within a category. So if you want to show concurrency or schedule, for example, you can do that. So with the condo shopping, I've had to talk to realtors, banks, and lawyers, which are a fun group of people to talk to. Living together with my fiance, so you can see when that happened in perspective to being engaged and getting married, and wedding planning, you can see happened the second we got engaged. Probably a little bit earlier for my fiance, but that's right. And these, again, are completely interactive, so you'll be able to see the exact date ranges and all of the information that you want through the interaction events. So you can just get a nice big summary, and then you can actually have your users drill deeper into the data as they're interacting with the visualization, so you can tell your story. Again, just very, very basic. We're just going to add some new rows into our data table. Nothing different about this data, just it happens to coincide at the same time as other events. So the visualization will just stack the bars nicely on top of each other. That's a lot of stuff. All right, so that's the timeline visualization, which is not available quite yet, but it will be available in about a week or so in our version 1.1, and I'll give you the links for everything at the end. Blood pressure. So with all of these events happening in my life all at the same time, it can get a little stressful, get a little bit stressful. And so here we're seeing my blood pressure over a course of about 6 months, I'd say, taken once every 15 days. And it's all over the place. It's up and down, it's everywhere. And actually, this isn't just stressful for me, but it's also stressful for my mother. She's very concerned. She still thinks of me as a 6-year-old that needs everything taken care of. I love you, Mom, but relax. So this is a scatter chart, and let's drill into how we make this scatter chart. Now, there's a lot more data on this visualization than with the previous visualizations. So we're going to move all of our data table setup to another function, just so I can fit it on 2 slides. And all it is a date and then 2 values. It's systolic if you're really concerned about what these blood pressure numbers mean. And we're just building our data table. And here, the only different thing is we're saying draw a scatter chart. Now, we could have had a line chart to plot the lines if we wanted. But other than that, everything is very simple. And then the visualization library is taking care of everything for us. Now, when you make something like a scatter chart, what you're really trying to do is you're saying, here are my data points, but there's got to be a pattern here somewhere. We want to see the trends. And so to help you make these trends, what we did was we add in automatic trend line calculation. And so that's just saying, given this set of data, I want a linear trend line. And you can actually go over here. And so you can see on March 1st, my blood pressure was at 140. My mother's was at 130, so I was actually a little more stressed out that day than she was. And you can also see along the different trend lines what both the formula for the trend line is and what the calculated value should be. What is the expected value based on that trend line? And you can go on, you can compare all of these numbers, and it's really a nice interactive experience for telling your story. And you can see here, I am getting more stressed out as time goes on. But my mother is about to explode any minute now, really. So let's take a look at how we add in these automatic trend lines. Again, we're doing the data table setup on the previous slide with the get blood pressure data table function. And all we're doing here to get the trend lines is we're saying in our options, add a couple of trend lines to series 0 and series 1. You'll notice it says type linear. We can also do exponential if we feel that's more appropriate for our data. But it's very, very simple, and we want to expose this to everybody so you can better see these patterns in your data, so you can better tell your story. And one more look at this table. All right, condo shopping. was another big part. If anybody's ever, even if you've just gone looking for apartments, there's a lot of data. You have square footage versus time to work versus how much is it going to cost you, and all kinds of different variables. One of the ways you can actually display a lot of these variables all at once is with a bubble chart. So this is something that already exists today, and we have this bubble chart. And so you can see on the y-axis we have the size of the unit. We have how much the unit costs on the x-axis. The size of the bubble corresponds to how far it is from, how much of a commute it will be to work. And the color of the bubble is the number of fireplaces. I really want a fireplace in my place, so I figured I'd put that up there too. And you can hover over these and see exactly, the exact details of all of these. You can say, okay, the list price is, $31,900 for this place. And it's going to take me 41 minutes to get to work. So this was a really useful way for my fiance and I to see all of these different listings all at once. And so let's see how exactly I draw that. The first thing I'm doing here is you're going to notice a couple of different options that are more for just the bubble chart. And so you have, I'm manually setting the labels for these, as well as setting a style on the bubble. I thought the text on the bubble was a little too big, so I made it a little smaller. And this is just one of the many things that you can customize. I'm drawing a bubble chart this time instead of a line chart or a scatter chart or a timeline. So I just call a bubble chart instead. You might also know this. Are people in here familiar with jQuery? You've heard of it? Yes, everybody's heard of jQuery. All right, awesome. jQuery is a library that helps you, provides a number of convenience methods, is one of the many things it does. And here what it's doing is it's actually making an XML request for a blob of JSON that actually has all of the data. And I'll show you what that data looks like. So this is just a JSON file that I had generated. It has the addresses, the prices. It rips all these from various real estate listing websites. And you'll notice that at the end of each row here is a URL. And I'm not really doing anything with this URL. On my chart here, it's just, when once I decide, okay, 358 Lexington Street here is worth looking at. So how do I say, okay, I want to go look at this? How do I know? So we actually added this functionality, actions. And so with the Actions API, you can actually go in and add more interactive elements to your tooltips. In this case, it would be really useful if I could just click on this and then view this on the listing website. And so if I click on that, I'm not connected to the internet. All right, that's okay. It comes up with a beautiful picture of the house and maybe a map and how much it costs, and a real estate agent I would need to get in touch with. And this is something that's really made it much easier for us to find a place to live. And this was not, this is not not a lot of code. And it's much, much nicer than most of the tools out there that I've found. So to add the action, how do we do this? This is a little bit different than we've seen our other features. What we're doing here is after we've constructed the chart object, our bubble chart, we're going to set an action on it. And the majority of stuff, the juicy bits of this is really this action function here. And the action function says when I click on that little label inside the tooltip, what do we do with it? And so all I do is I want to get the selection. I already have the URL that's in the data table. So I want to say, okay, based on my selection, I want to get the cell with the URL from the row. So we're going to get the selection, then we're going to get the value at the 5th column, and then we're going to open the URL. And that's all there is to it. You can do, it's just JavaScript, so you can do anything you want within that function. And really, this was like an incredibly useful tool when searching for real estate. It really helps to visualize where everything is, how far away everything is, rather than just looking at pictures of the inside. You can really see a lot of data all at once with the bubble chart. So that was a very good experience. Hopefully the closing will go well. The wedding, there's a lot. I have a very big family. I have a big international family. They're coming from all over the place. And it's tough to visualize stuff like this. So we actually do offer a geochart. And the geochart's going to show us where all of these wedding guests are coming from. And we can see, okay, I got a lot of people from Greenland, it looks like, and some Irish relatives, and a couple of people from the Ukraine, and maybe one guy from Spain. And you can map out all the data you want, and these will be geocoded for you. So let's take a look at how we're constructing this data. So I'm not actually providing anything complicated for my data table. I'm providing just the name of the country. Common names here are going to be cached by the library, so it won't need to make a network request to figure out, okay, what is Ireland? Where is that on my map? It'll actually just know that. More complex names, if you want to provide longitude and latitude, it'll make a geocoding request to the Google Maps API. And this is all done automatically for you. So here we're just saying the region that the guests are coming from, and then the number of guests coming from that area. Here we need to load a different package than we've loaded before. We're going to load the geochart package, and then we're going to construct the geochart object. So very, very simple to create a geochart. But if you look, this is actually a Mercator projection. And a Mercator projection is basically how you're going to, a map projection, first of all, is how you're going to take the globe and translate it to a flat surface. And here is the Mercator projection. And this Mercator projection is very common. I'm sure you've all seen a map of the world that looks like this. And it was really designed for marine navigation. And that's pretty much it. And that's pretty much all it's useful for. And if you look at Greenland, it's giant. It's bigger than Africa. Mercator, you're going to take something and you're going to stretch it out such that if you were to go directly side to side here, so if you were to go from Maine, you would end up somewhere in France, exactly east. But this isn't really too useful for seeing things. When I was a little kid and I knew my relatives from Greenland, I thought they must be super powerful because Greenland must be super powerful because it's giant. But Mercator really isn't appropriate here. So we've added the ability to have different map projections. So you can decide what is the best way to show this data. And this is a Kavreiski, I think it's Kavreiski 7. And this map projection is going to give you minimal distortion. And so here you can see, well, Greenland is a much more reasonable size. Australia is a much more reasonable size. Everything looks in proportion. And this projection is really designed so that each of the individual regions are minimally distorted. So to change my visualization, to have a different projection, all I'm doing here is adding another option. And this option is just going to say, okay, I want not the default projection. I want to specify the Kavreiski 7 projection instead. So we can go back and we can see a much nicer view of the world. I also have a lot of people visiting from within the United States. You can see the view of the United States here. Again, it's a little stretched out. This is the Mercator projection again. This isn't really what the United States looks like. Everything's kind of distorted the further you venture away from the equator. But in order to construct this, we're just passing the state codes. And most of these are cached again. So we're creating our data table with all of the states and the number of visitors. In order to zoom in on a specific region, we're just going to provide that in the options. So in this case, we want to view the US region. And we have our Mercator projection of the United States. But a more appropriate projection for the United States is the Albers projection. And this is actually what I'm used to seeing when I see a map of the United States, is this. So in order to specify this projection, we're going to, again, give the projection option. But this one's a little different. This one, you're able to specify parallels. And some projections require you to specify these parallels where is the projection essentially centered around. So this might be 29.5, 45.5. That's appropriate for the United States, but it might not be appropriate for the European Union, for example. So these are good ones. It will choose these by default if you want, but these are ones I wanted to handpick. So again, we can see the Albers, the equal area. And we can actually go back and compare a little. So if you look at Minnesota and Florida and how they really shift between the two. And even the distance, you can see Maine and Washington kind of coming together. And it really demonstrates the amount of distortion that each of the projections is making up for. All right. Get you guys out of here and get you to lunch. So our new features. We had the new visualization in the timeline visualization. We added the ability to add in trend lines. We have actions, new interactions for our tooltips, and map projections for more appropriately displaying geocharts. And all of this is for free, and you can see this at developers.google.com/chart, and it's a simple JavaScript API. And that's about all I had. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, just a quick one. Ken Anderson from University of Colorado. I've been really excited to learn more about Dart while I've been here, and
Yes.
I'm wondering what is the timeline, or are there plans in place to integrate services like these into Dart? Because right now, I don't know how easy it is to call existing JavaScript libraries straight from Dart.
So I know of no way currently with Dart. We haven't discussed this with our team at all. I will say that we have worked a lot with GWT, Google Web Toolkit, so we do have GWT wrappers for all of these.
Okay.
But as far as Dart, if you can call JavaScript code from Dart, then you'll be able to call this from Dart. But there are no specific Dart wrappers.
Thanks.
Timothy Wall with CloudLock. I'm looking forward to seeing the timeline come out. I've currently got a visualization based on Google App Engine costs over time.
Okay.
So we can see the usage and spiking of costs. And we also have that mapped in with another data source that shows sort of what's going on in the application at the time. So we end up having a lot of events there, and the default formatting for injecting, I guess they're called annotations, into the graph is rather limited. Do you have any plans, or is there anything upcoming to allow more customization of the annotations that are put on a given visualization?
We're absolutely looking into adding more customizations all the time. My recommendation would be to complain on the public mailing list. We really do listen to all of everything on all of the mailing lists that we receive. We have had some complaints from, had some feature requests to add more annotations. I don't think I can talk about specific schedules or promise anything right now. But
well, I noticed with the action, it looked like the specific data around that had been formatted in a particular way. I don't know if that was customized or if that's the default presentation.
That was actually the default customization. I was running that exact code to make that presentation. I think I might have changed the size a little bit for the presentation, but other than that, that was the default. There is some customization, and we're always looking to improve the customizability of our product. So, yep.
So I know you said the colors are chosen kind of based on what pops the most. Is there any way to override that for branding purposes for certain companies want to use their colors in their logo?
Absolutely. It's not always appropriate to use the default colors. For example, sometimes red you want to be indicating a high number, like with temperature, but sometimes you want it to be a low number, like with money. So yes, there are ways, and read all about them on developers.google.com/chart.
Thanks.
No problem.
Hi, is there any intention to make this available within Android apps rather than just on the web?
Mobile is a very important part of Google's strategy as a whole. Right now, these charts will output to SVG. We are actively working to make them better, more adding in support for touch events, for example. But they will render just fine right now on a native web browser.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
You showed a number of for example, the timeline charts. Excuse me. Is there a way to have two of the charts kind of stacked one above each other? So using your example again, showing not just your blood pressure chart, but showing that over the timeline chart and being able to have a line move between, a vertical line move between them to show where you are looking at any given point.
So we do have the ability for you to add an arbitrary number of charts onto a page. As far as adding a line right down the middle, we don't have support for that yet. But we do have the ability to build dashboards where you can transform your data for all of your charts all at once. So you can have the data change the range, and so you can go through time like that.
Okay.
But as far as the line, right, that specific way of showing that story, we don't yet.
So putting multiple charts on the page at the time, that's just a matter of putting in two divs and having them more or less
Absolutely.
aligned with each other. Okay.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
no problem.
I'm excited about the timeline charts as well. I was wondering if there's a way to specify your own metric for time, like if you wanted to do geologic epochs or something like that and still use those tools.
So in addition to passing in dates, you can just pass in numbers. It will try to convert those to dates, and it does a reasonably good job. I guess beyond that, there's not a lot. It will display no matter what numbers you put in there. So there's that. I would recommend once it's released, play around with it and see if it fits your needs, and if it doesn't, let us know. Really, let us know.
Okay.
We're always looking for more feedback. Thank you.
Hi. I think Google Visualization API is a static chart by a static data. So for my understanding, so do you have a plan to develop a real-time chart by updating Ajax or WebSockets, something like that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Do you have a plan to develop a real-time chart? I think Google chart is static chart, I think. Do you have a plan to updating by the Ajax or WebSockets visualize real-time?
We don't provide that. However, you can just update the chart. So if you write if you have a set interval on a page, for example, and you're saying redraw the chart, so you can see. Let me go back to some code.
You have transformations on charts, don't you?
Absolutely. So right here, where we're going chart.draw, you can save that chart object and just call chart.draw again with different data and different options. And we actually do have animation transitions between those two states.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
In fact, a similar question here. The use case is like a live stock price scenario where there's data that comes in every minute or two, and instead of reloading all of the JSON data table, is there a way to just feed the delta that we have for the last minute into the chart?
You can certainly add on to a data table
Okay.
once you've finished constructing the data
And
table.
then I will do draw again?
Yes. So
Okay.
you can say, okay, add this data, remove this data, and then redraw. Or just add data, or just remove data. Whatever you'd like to do.
If I just add data, it won't draw automatically. I have to programmatically call the draw. Is that
Correct. You just have to have that one extra call where it's chart.draw.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I was wondering if you have any options to download the data table on the client?
You can convert data tables to a JSON string. And so you can expose that functionality to your users. And then you can actually provide just a JSON blob to the data table to reconstruct it in a different context.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. I was looking at the scatter graph, and I
Yep.
was wondering if there is an option to provide threshold. For example, you had blood pressure, and I want to look at blood pressure beyond certain number, say 140 red, and below certain number bad, it's low blood pressure. So can you visualize that in the scatter graph or some other form of graph?
Yes, so I mentioned, in addition to providing just the raw data table, you can also set attributes. And one of the things you can set is, my goodness, I forget the term that we use off the top of my head. But you can, roles, you can assign roles. And so you can assign a scope role to a piece of data and say this is out of scope or this is in scope. And it will color that data appropriately. So if you want to only highlight the ones that are within the range, you can assign a scope role to do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are these control ADA compliant?
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
The timeline and all this visualization control, are they ADA compliant? ADA compliant or section 503? This accessibility?
No, not yet. We are working on, there's actually some really exciting things that we're working on right now. They are not finished, but we are thinking about accessibility and we'll hopefully have a better answer for you shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, when I look at all the geolocalization, like just give Ireland and map Ireland automatically, it looks really like Fusion table of functionality. What's the plan in the future between Fusion table and releasing all those features?
Could you say that one more time, please?
What's the roadmap behind it, having all those features for any developers to integrate in the website, and right now going through Fusion table to have the same result and same story at the end of the day?
Are you asking about Fusion tables?
Yes.
I honestly don't know too much about Fusion tables. Does anybody have any idea? Believe it or not, they don't consult me on everything. I have my charts and graphs and stuff, but I actually don't know too much about Fusion tables. I'm very sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
So if I want to set the scale on a chart on the side, do I have other ways to do it besides just a static linear chart that encompasses all the data? Can I have data that's off the chart and just have that sort of disconnected and appear sort of above it and say this is constrained to between 80 and 120 or whatever the values are?
Yes.
And also, can you do a non-linear scale? Can
Yes.
I do a logarithmic scale, for
Yes,
example?
both of those, absolutely. You can set the axis scale yourself. You can set the start and end points for anything. You can also set custom logarithmic scales for everything, including the points at which you want to show on the axis. All of that's documented on the site.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, really excited to hear about 1.1 coming out soon. I was wondering if there were any other new charts in 1.1 or if there were any other new releases with new charts in it in the upcoming roadmap.
So right now, the only brand new visualization is the timeline. We do want to eventually provide even more visualizations. As far as 1.0 versus 1.1, 1.0 is always the current stable version. 1.1 is always the beta version. So eventually we'll merge 1.1 to be 1.0. It's our numbering scheme. I don't know what to tell you about that.
So when's the next 1.1 coming?
In about a week. In about a week, you'll be able to play around. You'll have timelines on 1.1 and be able to play around with that. Hopefully another month after we get the testing and any bugs fixed, we'll get that out in maybe a month or so after.
Okay, so are there any more new charts coming in the next 6-12 months?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, well, if there's not, I'm happy to stick around for a couple of minutes. Thank you for coming and enjoy your lunch.